Subscribe because it's free.
The Kirad tore through the Valera system like a storm of claws and fury. Their ships, jagged and black, sliced into the Zari fleet with precision that bordered on art. Metal screeched as hulls split open, spilling debris into the void. The Zari, with their sleek silver vessels and plasma cannons, fought hard, but it wasn't enough. The Kirad didn't just destroy, they savored it. Their roars echoed through comms, a guttural chorus that drowned out the dying gasps of their prey. 8 limbs, each tipped with blades that could rend steel, moved in unison, guided by a hive mind that thought as one. Within hours, the Zari Armada was a graveyard, floating husks against the backdrop of a dying star. The Kirad didn't pause to mourn or celebrate. They fed. Across the galaxy, their name was a curse whispered in shadows. The Kirad had clawed their way to the top of the food chain, leaving a trail of broken worlds. The insectoid Krell, with their vast underground hives, lasted 3 cycles before their tunnels ran red. The Cipher, crystalline beings who sang through light, shattered under Kirad talons. Their song silenced forever. Dozens fell, some fought, some begged, all died. The Kirad lived by a simple creed: the weak feed the strong. A Zari pilot's log, recovered from the wreckage, told of their cruelty. They didn't kill us outright, he rasped, voice trembling. They crippled our ships, let us drift, watched us scream. They laughed as we burned. That log cut off mid-sentence, replaced by static and the sound of claws on metal. The galaxy wasn't a peaceful place before the Kirad, but they made it a slaughterhouse. The Council of Spheres, a shaky alliance of survivors, clung to existence on the fringes. The Zari had been their strongest, a species of warriors with tech that rivaled stars. Now they were gone and the Council trembled. The Kirad didn't negotiate or trade. They took planets stripped bare, populations harvested, resources devoured. No one dared challenge them. The Krell had tried, swarming with millions. The Cipher had tried, weaving light into weapons. Failure was the only reward. The Council's delegates met in secret, their voices low, their plans futile. "We wait," one said. "We hide," said another. Resistance was a dream they couldn't afford. Beyond their borders, the galaxy sprawled, a mix of thriving hubs and desolate wastes. But all knew the Kirad's shadow loomed largest. Far from the Council's gaze, a speck of a planet spun in obscurity. Earth, they called it. A backwater rock in an uncharted arm. Its people barely passed burning fuel to move their machines. The Kirad hadn't noticed it, nor had the Council. To the galaxy, humans were nothing, a species too primitive to matter. Their cities glowed faintly, their signals weak, their lives small. No one spoke of them in the grand halls or war rooms. They were a footnote waiting to be erased, if anyone bothered to write it. But the universe has a way of turning the overlooked into the unexpected, and Earth's quiet hum was about to grow louder. In their command ship, a hulking mass of spikes and bone, the Kirad warlord ZYHR lounged on a throne of skulls. His eyes, 6 glowing slits, tracked a holographic map as it pulsed with conquered systems. A scout's report crackled through, faint but clear. A new signal, weak, from a distant edge. ZYHR's mandibles clicked, a sound like knives sharpening. Another world, the scout said. Soft creatures, no defenses worth noting. ZYHR's laughter rumbled, deep and cruel. He'd crushed stronger foes with less effort. The Zari had ships, the Krell had numbers. Both were dust. This would be a diversion, a snack before the next hunt. "Send a party," he ordered, voice a growl that shook the deck. "Test their strength, break their will." The scout obeyed, and the ship turned toward Earth, engines thrumming with hunger. ZYHR leaned forward, claws flexing. "Let us feast on their terror," he said, and the galaxy held its breath, unaware that the predators had just chosen their match. The Kirad scout ship pierced Earth's atmosphere, a dark splinter against the blue sky. Its hull shimmered, cloaking it from primitive sensors as it descended. Below, human cities sprawled, grids of concrete and glass, fragile compared to the galaxy's wonders. Vehicles belched smoke, crawling along roads, while the inhabitants scurried like ants, unaware. VY Arkesh, the scout leader, peered through the ship's scanners, his mandibles twitching with disdain. "Look at them," he snarled, voice a rasp over the comms. "No shields, no plasma, just toys of metal and fire." He patched the feed to ZYKHR, the Warlord 6 eyes narrowing as he watched. "These soft creatures will break in a single claw swipe," VYR Kesh said, and JR's laughter crackled back, a sound like bone snapping. The scout ship hovered, picking its target, a dusty outpost on the edge of a desert, far from the human hives. They struck at dusk, shadows stretching long across the sand. The Kirad dropped from their ship, 8 limbs churning, claws gleaming. The outpost was a cluster of tents and low buildings, guarded by a handful of soldiers in drab uniforms. VYR Kesh expected screams, surrender, the usual prelude to a feast. Instead, gunfire erupted, sharp cracks of human weapons, bullets pinging off Kirad hides. A soldier, grizzled and square-jawed, barked orders. "Hold the line. They bleed, we bleed. Let's see who bleeds out first." A grenade rolled under a Kirad's legs, bursting in a flash of fire and shrapnel. The beast staggered, black blood oozing, before lunging forward and tearing a man in half. 2 more fell, but the humans didn't run. They reloaded, aimed, fought. VYR Kesh lost a warrior to a lucky shot through an ice slit, and his growl was more irritation than alarm. "Pathetic," he muttered, crushing a radio tower with a swipe. Deep underground, in a bunker lit by flickering screens, a human general chewed a cigar and stared at grainy footage of the attack. His name was Carver, a man carved from years of war. Human wars, petty by galactic standards. Reports flooded in, alien contact, heavy casualties, no surrender. "They're testing us," he said, voice gravelly, eyes hard. "Good. Let's test them back." He slammed a fist on the table, barking orders. "Get me wreckage. Anything we can cut apart. Rig traps, arm the reserves, move." Across the planet, humans stirred. Scientists in white coats poured over a Kirad claw, its edge still dripping. Engineers hauled twisted metal from the outpost, welding it into crude barricades. Soldiers trained with capture blades, cursing as they adjusted to the weight. Carver watched a live feed of a soldier rigging a truck with explosives, a grin splitting his face. "They don't know us yet," he said to his aide. "Let's keep it that way." The bunker hummed with purpose, a quiet defiance taking root. VYR Kesh returned to the scout ship, dragging a human corpse as a trophy. His report to ZYKHR was curt, dismissive. "They resist, but it's nothing. A fleeting spark before the crush." He replayed the fight, bullets bouncing, a few scratches on Kirad armor, the outpost reduced to rubble. ZYKHR's eyes glinted, his claws tapping his throne. "A spark," he rumbled. "Then we'll drown it in blood. Send the fleet." VYR Kesh nodded, already tasting the slaughter. The ship lifted off, leaving the desert scarred and silent, save for a faint crackle on a broken human radio. A voice cut through the static, steady and low. "They're coming. Let's give them hell." In the bunker, Carver lit another cigar, staring at a map of Earth now marked with red. The Kirad thought they'd seen resistance. They hadn't seen anything yet. The Kirad fleet descended, a swarm of black spikes blotting out the stars. Their ships unleashed fire, turning cities into craters. New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, gone in blasts of plasma and ash. Claws hit the ground running, tearing through tanks and bunkers with ease. Their roar shook the earth, a symphony of hunger and rage. Humans died by the thousands, soldiers and civilians alike, swallowed by the onslaught. But the Kirad didn't find the panic they craved. In the rubble of London, a band of fighters darted through alleys, lobbing firebombs that seared Kirad flesh. In rural fields, farmers rigged tractors with blades, charging beasts twice their size. A teenage girl in a burned-out suburb hurled a Molotov cocktail, screaming, "You don't get my home!" The invaders pressed on, relentless, but the prey didn't break. They bit back. Humanity's counterattack wasn't pretty, but it was clever. In a gutted factory, engineers cracked open a Kirad ship's core, rewiring its cannons to fire on its own kind. The first shot punched through a landing craft, raining debris on the invaders below. A scientist, bleary-eyed and caffeine-fueled, tested a severed Kirad limb, and found it flinched at high-pitched noise. Within hours, crews bolted speakers to trucks, blasting sonic pulses that drove the aliens into frenzies, slashing each other by mistake. A pilot, call sign Maverick, strapped into a creaking jet, grinned through cracked teeth. "For the kids back home," he said, then dove straight into a Kirad command ship, the explosion lighting up the night. Each move was desperate, messy, and effective. Humans turning junk into weapons and fear into fuel. The Kirad felt the shift. ZYKHAR stood on his flagship's bridge, watching reports of losses pile up. A sonic blast had crippled a squad in Paris, their own claws turning inward. A hacked ship rained death on their lines in Shanghai. Human snipers, perched in ruins, picked off scouts with scavenge rifles. "They do not break," a subordinate hissed, voice trembling. "They multiply." ZYKHAR smashed the console, his roar drowning out the alarms. He'd expected a quick hunt, not a war. In a forest clearing, humans lured a Kirad platoon into a trap. Mines buried shallow. Tripwires taut, stolen plasma, grenades rigged to blow. The blast shredded the unit, leaving one survivor to limp back with a warning. ZYKHAR's claws dug into his throne. Black blood dripping from a wound he refused to acknowledge. This wasn't prey. This was something else. Across Earth, a signal cut through the chaos. General Carver's voice, rough as sandpaper, broadcast from a battered bunker. "Listen up," he said, static crackling. "They came to eat us. We're not on the menu. We're not prey. We're the storm." The words hit every radio, every survivor with a receiver. In a subway tunnel, a medic stitching a soldier's arm nodded grimly. In a trilene, a sniper adjusted her scope, muttering, "Storm's coming, bastards." The Kirad fleet still loomed, but cracks showed, ships hesitated, commanders argued, morale frayed. ZYKHAR glared at Earth's glowing wounds on his map, his rage boiling over. "Insolent species," he snarled, rising from his throne. "I'll crush them myself." His ship turned, engines roaring, as humanity braced for the storm's peak. ZYKHAR landed in a ruined city, his bulk cracking pavement as he stepped from his ship. Smoke curled around him, the air thick with ash and defiance. Human defenses rallied, soldiers in tattered gear, civilians with scavenged weapons, all converging on the Kirad warlord. General Carver faced him, a wiry figure dwarfed by the alien's 8-limb frame. In one hand, a Kirad blade, its edge chipped but sharp. In the other, a sonic grenade, humming faintly. ZYKHAR charged, claws slashing air, mandibles snapping. Carver dodged barely, the blade slicing his arm. Blood hit the ground, but he grinned, tossing the grenade. It burst, a shriek that staggered ZYKHAR, his roar turning to a howl. The general lunged, driving the blade into a leg joint, black ichor spraying. ZYKHAR swatted him back, ribs cracking, but Carver triggered a trap, rigged explosives and collapsed building. The structure fell, burying ZYKHAR in steel and stone, his final snarl cut short. The Kirad fleet faltered as their leader's signal died. Ships pulled back, commanders barking retreat. Earth was a wasteland. Cities flattened, millions gone, but humans stood. In a shattered plaza, survivors sang, voices raw, a hymn of grit over loss. A soldier, leg bandaged, raised a fist. "We lost everything, but we kept our souls." Engineers hauled debris, already planning to rebuild. Scientists cataloged Kirad tech, eyes gleaming with ideas. The cost was steep, billions dead, landscape scarred, but the victory was theirs. Carver, dying on a stretcher, rasped, "Tell him we fought. Tell him we won." His aide nodded, tears cutting through dust as the last Kirad ships vanished into the void. Word spread beyond Earth, rippling through the galaxy. The Council of Spheres met, their chambers buzzing. A Zari delegate, one of few left, leaned forward. "The predators ran from the prey," she whispered, voice awed. Footage leaked, grainy clips of humans toppling giants with scraps and guts. The Krell chittered in their hives. The Cypher's remnants pulsed with faint light, all hearing the same tale. The Kirad, unbreakable, broken. A scout ship returned to the Kirad homeworld, its crew silent, Speaking of the unbreakable ones in hushed tones, the council debated aid, alliance, fear. Earth had shifted the balance. No longer a footnote. Humans were a force, their name echoing where the Kirads once ruled. A child picked through rubble, small hands finding a Kirad claw, snapped and dull. "Did we really win?" she asked, looking up at an elder with gray hair and steady eyes. "We didn't just win," he said, kneeling beside her. "We showed them who we are." He pointed to the horizon, where dawn broke over a battered land, faint but fierce. The galaxy had feared the Kirad, masters of slaughter, lords of terror. They'd crushed worlds, devoured hope, ruled unchallenged. Until they met humans, stubborn, scrappy, relentless. The child clutched a claw, a trophy of a fight no one thought they'd survive. The elder's voice carried soft but sure. They came for a meal. We gave them a war. And the stars, watching silent, knew a new story had begun.